Jujutsu Thursday, my special day of the week where I get yelled at for stuff. I'm your unfortunate host, me, which brings me to last week's reception to my video. My editor sent me comments, many of them really, honestly, most of them being supportive. One caught my attention that I need to stop reading comments, which I will proudly say, I only read what I am sent by my editor, and I've actually stopped reading comments in 2025. I think basically this time last year is when I stopped. So just so you know, I'm healthy, I'm okay, I'm not burnt out on content creation, though I am burnt out because I am an American. And if you are an American, you know what I mean when I say I am burnt out. So let's just say that for most of my regular viewers over the years, this is a very new, more emboldened version of me, which can be sort of a shock, especially since it wasn't until I'd say this year that I started to be more openly unforgiving, negative, and even outwardly cynical. And to be honest, I'll take that C word to heart. I don't like being cynical. I'll work on that. But this is done so that I can come off as more authentic in an era that is now being overwrought by AI slop and, simply put, inauthenticity. The change in tone is simply because I am not here to waste your time. I want to say something of value, and as a content creator of over 15 years now, I feel it is important to, from here on out, be authentic, even if it may come off as worrying, which is not intended, and yes, something I need to work on. Because I am trying to adjust to this new, more honest style of script writing. This is all being done out of respect for the individual human being watching, which is you, not to cater to algorithms, comments, likes and dislikes, viewer metrics, or subscription numbers, things that I've grown to hate. All that matters to me is if you watch my video, even if it's 1 million or simply 1,000, that you enjoy it and come away feeling as if you watched an actual human being review something, or in this case, lose his mind because of how bad Season 3 of JJK is. Even if you don't agree with that, I hope that answers these comments in a respectful way, as let's just say I'm about to dive into why I thought this episode of Jujutsu Kaisen was messier than a sloppy Joe. So we see Higuruma using deadly sentence against Yuji as he tells him all acts of violence are prohibited in this space. While there is certainly a lot of dialogue here, the simple thing you need to know about this first part of the episode is that Higuruma's cursed technique is based on a court trial, which is really just to say law and order. So if you want to think of it this way, it's like Danganronpa, Ace Attorney, or your mother guilt-tripping you. This is when Itadori remembers what Tengen said to him one time about how domains used to be a standard skill for sorcerers in the past because they didn't have the guaranteed kill or guaranteed hit element. So the way this works is that they both have arguments and appeals, which are responses in the form of silence, confessions, or denial, which may include false statements. Itadori says that he entered Maji Vegas to poop, which is about the most Itadori thing he could say besides wanting to be looked down upon by a tall woman with a nice butt. Honestly, can you blame him for that? But from the manila envelope, Higuruma pulls out a photo which suggests he was there to play games. Itadori simply had to say that he didn't recognize the parlor and deny it, but he chose wrong here. And now he is thus declared guilty by the pretty lady voice, and thus suffers confiscation. From there, kick fucking assery is brought to us. Hype or a movement? Oh yeah, this one's deserved, my friends. By far, one of the most kick-ass of all kick-ass characters, Higuruma. Kickin' ass! He runs at him using his gavel, which turns into a giant wooden mallet. By the way, I love his mallet. I would love to get a replica of that just to put in like a display case. Oh my god, so cool. But afterwards, we get a fantastic Tatsuki Fujimoto reference to look back, which is a story about two girls and their journey in becoming professional mangaka. I have a video of it on youtube.com/BentoYT, where I cover all Tatsuki Fujimoto manga, anime, and film, mostly Chainsaw Man right now. But this was shown as an example of how Higuruma became more or less a computer that would both input and output the code of law, to the point that he became the embodiment of the law itself. So like, I don't know, RoboCop. I actually really want to do like a RoboCop rewatch in my Discord server where we go through the first 3 films and even the remake, which I think is a little bit underrated. That's another video. But he's basically being compared to that of Blind Justice itself, which is a high watermark. But what he really excelled at was sorcery, as we see Higuruma use his own fist to basically pound his gavel into Itadori's face. Then it proceeded with about the worst Demon Slayer Naruto monologue I've ever seen. We'll talk about more of this later in the video in way more detail, but to simply put, the narrator easily ruins some of this fight, as we are told with every sentence how much of a badass Higuruma is. To me, it just takes away completely from the moment of Higuruma showing how badass he is. And, you know, this is what I talk about a lot with Gege Akutami. I feel like he just can't get out of his own way. At least Demon Slayer and Naruto are mostly consistent with their monologues. Bleach, really good with those. And I'm seriously starting to hate this awful, boring narrator so much in this series. Just please let me watch the fight play out without a monologue. I don't need you to tell me it took him 12 weeks to become a grade 1 sorcerer. This is Jujutsu Kaisen. This is the Colon game. I know by default how important Higuruma is based on the fact that he is the sole focus of an entire episode. Just show me him kicking ass. You know, for people who tell me up and down all the time that Jujutsu Kaisen is way better than something like a Demon Slayer, at least Demon Slayer's monologues are interesting and actually service the story and the fights. Even if it's been done a million times before, it's still good. I can't say the same about this fight. It was simply annoying to me. But then again, I have more what I want to say about later in this video, so I'm not going to waste your time with it right now. It'll happen later. I'll waste your time later. Yes, I'm trying to get you to watch the entire video. Thankfully, the show gets out of its own way enough to show us some absolutely badass fighting with no dialogue ringing in my ear. Higuruma throws gavel after gavel with meme and gif-worthy precision like an automatic machine gun as Itadori blocks it all. So good. We then stop the fight again to explain the confiscation that it makes it impossible to use one's curse technique. And honestly, why do we even need this explained? Wouldn't it be cool if it's just not explained and you have to kind of figure it out through context clues? That's kind of how I like stuff like this. Like I just said, I'm done with this whole explaining stuff, you know? I'm smart. I'm not dumb. I know what stuff does. But this then leads to Itadori sneaking around Higuruma as he monologues about the usual, which then gets him caught as we see some fantastic animation of Itadori crashing down onto the stage, which leads to another trial where he is accused of mass murder in Shibuya, which is a fantastic callback in all of the chaos of this episode, and really honestly where this episode turns itself around by the second half into something that is almost beautiful. He immediately pleads guilty to killing them, which I loved because it plays upon the guilty conscience and survivor's guilt that Itadori carries. We then see a flashback of where Higuruma tells an old man that he submitted his proposal. He tells him that it is good enough for sentencing, but then asks if he would then become a judge, which is a big deal, as judges in any society, no matter its status, is a really big thing. It requires impartiality and expertise, which is difficult as this means you must become the embodiment of law itself, a vehicle of justice, but not justice. I think. Did I just contradict myself? I think I did. You know what I mean? Become a vehicle of justice, but not justice itself. Justice is in, like, the passenger seat. It's a nuance that is balanced on the scale of Lady Justice. This is when I was simply awestruck. Higuruma reveals himself to be cynical in that he perceives the world as basically unjust. That no matter what spotlight is shown on something, when it comes to the law of man, all you will find is nothing. To me, this moment showed the duality of Higuruma, one that is just so fantastically well thought out for his character. He is grappling with the law itself as an institution, and also the institution of humanity. It came off to me that justice has driven him mad, because he wanted to find a balance, something to illuminate his worry and his confusion. An answer to the madness of humanity, and all he found was more sorrow and no answer, no matter how hard he would dive. And this moment was another example. He knows that Itadori didn't kill those people. It was Sukuna. And so he refuses to execute Itadori's technique and let himself lose this fight. because he simply cannot penalize someone who did no wrong by the laws of man, but not by the institution of Japanese law. He couldn't let another moment like in the previous episode happen to another innocent boy that he is responsible for. And in turn, he found the answer that he was looking for all along. And to simply put, I have to give applause to Gege Akutami for how he has written this aspect of his character. For all the bad I perceive Akutami as doing for this series, he certainly does have a lot of bright spots hidden throughout. He tells Itadori that he's returned to his roots and asks if he's killed someone, to which he says he has after a pregnant pause of contemplation. Once again, I feel like Mappa is the reason I even like Jujutsu Kaisen sometimes, because the voice acting from Higuruma and Itadori really shows the nuance in the words and the story. Higuruma feels trapped by law itself, to constantly judge the world not throughout his own lens, but through that of a corrupted national law. And Itadori, who feels guilty because his body was overtaken by someone else. Akutami-san was simply showing how these two characters are similar, damn near the same. Both feel guilty for things out of their control. And that nuance could only be captured, in my opinion, by Mappa and the director of this episode. This was S+ tier voice acting and writing that I wish was in an episode that was much better than this one, as my alarm goes off. Hell, in a season much better than this one. This truly feels like the greatest highlight of this series overall, which is so odd because this is like, what, episode 56 or something like that of this series now? Either way, despite the messiness of this overall episode, I am very grateful for these small bits throughout that shine through. And the after credits scene beautifully closes out this episode with Higuruma saying that he might turn himself in after killing 2 people in the courtroom from the last episode, after the cooling game ends or if the barrier opens up for him. But more than that, he can't join Itadori because he'd feel even more guilty. Not because of what he did, not as a criticism even, but because of his own moral code. This shows that Higuruma went through a character arc and grew and returned to his roots as he said, and is honest to his word. He made his own decision and ignored the institution of law, choosing to instead follow his own sense of justice. I'll tell you, one thing I'm starting to greatly dislike about Jujutsu Kaisen and Gege Akutami's writing is how he constantly says, this brand new character is one of the strongest sorcerers ever. He's done this with Akari, who he wrote to be just below Satoru Gojo in power. Now, this is an issue of Akutami-san's own mistakes in making Gojo more important than he really ever needed to be. But it is also very tiring to hear this brand new character of the week is just so immensely powerful. Do I believe Higuruma is more talented of a sorcerer than he is of a lawman? No. But I do believe I really like Higuruma so much that I want to believe that. And I know he isn't, because Akutami's writing has shown through us with characters like Meimei, Nobara, Megumi, Hikari, etc., that what he says about a character being so freaking powerful means nothing in actual practice. After all, if Nobara can die in such a throwaway scene that makes her look like a chump, then why should I believe that Higuruma or Hikari, despite being some of my all-time favorite characters, will be anything more than a shock value death in the next episode, or somehow survive a shock death for that matter? Simply put, this is Akutami's own mistakes. And another thing I'm starting to tire of is this formula of Tengen narrating these fights. I'm just done with it. I was told for so long that Jujutsu Kaisen is better because there are no monologues in their fights like you'd see in other shonen like Demon Slayer, which Jujutsu Kaisen fans will tell you, and me, up and down the show is only popular because of the fights and because of the animation. But one such criticism is that the monologues during the fights in Demon Slayer are annoying. Well, this episode, and basically every episode where there's a fight in JJK, features a monologue that why do we need it? Why? I don't really feel like I needed to be told Higuruma was the real deal by the narrator because we can see it. One of the great things about art, and in particular the art of story and writing, is that it is much better to show than it is to tell. There is no reasons I need to be fed these monologues, which, by the way, never really change. This monologue is the exact same as every other monologue we've had before. It's a formula. Some will say that this is a staple of Jujutsu Kaisen, but once more, Why is it that Demon Slayer is called garbage for doing this when Jujutsu Kaisen is just as guilty? And I hate to say this, and it's going to make a lot of people angry, but at the very least, when it comes to Demon Slayer, I know that my favorite character won't die simply because the mangaka dictated he needed a shock moment that week in the manga. Simply put, I felt Higuruma was diminished greatly from the previous episode simply because the writing felt like it was desperately trying to convince me he was a badass. We know he is. But the fact that I'm getting this narrator force-fed into my ears constantly kind of made me spite the narrator. We get it, monologues are cool, but this is where I wish JJK would be more like Chainsaw Man and just shut up and let the moment speak for itself. Something that Chainsaw Man is really good at doing. Do I need a monologue during an anime fight? No, just as I don't need a monologue during sex. Let the passion flow through the moment in the moment itself. Not in the words I am constantly being berated with by a narrator who sounds monotone and simply bored. Now that being said, I will say the best part of these past 2 episodes, and maybe honestly the series as a whole, is Higuruma, who to me is a character representing a sort of midlife crisis, trying to grasp at the straws of becoming his truest self and rejecting the notions of societal structures. Becoming more than just a vehicle for the law of input and output, and instead becoming a vehicle for his own sense of self-justice. No longer is Higuruma the boy who has lived life by the rule of strict Japanese law or by what others tell him to live by, but is now living by the flexible plasticity of his own law, curving and bending rather than being unbending and unforgiving. I think this episode will probably go down in history as easily the best that Gege Akutami probably has ever done for Jujutsu Kaisen. I think this kind of writing is what I want to see from him more. And honestly, it's kind of what I loved from him, it's what I loved from what I saw in Jujutsu Kaisen 0. It's the same kind of writing there too. It's what made me fall in love with JJK in the first place, besides his brilliant character designs. The nuances of being a human being itself shines through, and you can tell that Akutami-san toiled over how to best capture his sense of helplessness as he aged, and also how he came out of the water in his own bathtub to be rebirthed into a man that is more true to himself than ever was before. In other words, this episode had a lot of good and bad. I really got the sense that Akutami-san rejects Japanese societal norms and chooses to live his own way in defiance to what has come before. It's honestly really beautiful and captures the complexity of his outlook on life so well. And it really does feel like I went into his mind in this moment, which I think is brilliant, and I love that. Now just imagine if the care he treated Higuruma and Itadori with in these last 2 episodes was how he treated Nobara, Gojo, or even Junpei. Remember him? Once again, I am left with a bittersweet feeling that Jujutsu Kaisen just could have been so much more than what it currently is. What it currently is a messy collection of fights, inconsistent writing, and abysmal pacing. Well, you can check out more of my Jujutsu Kaisen, Frieren, and Fate Strange Fate content right here on the screen. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.